Hello and welcome to a brand new season of the Euphoria podcast. This is the start of the show where I yap. We are days away now from beginning the winter season, and while there are so many new and exciting things to talk about, I take comfort in knowing that the format for winter is at least the same. One semblance of normalcy to hold on to as we embark on this crazy year and this crazy journey. I'm, of course, Drakos, joined by Rob and Vedius to talk a little bit about all the changes coming on and off the Rift, as well as talk about the offseason. And more importantly, who the biggest winners and losers were in that offseason. Who are the most excited for?
But before we get to any of that,
yes,
have you two considered how old we are?
God.
Okay. No.
Is this?
So listen.
People still think I'm younger than 30, and I'm just gripping
yeah, so we
desperately
are
to
three
that.
men in our early 30s.
Hell yeah.
Okay? And yesterday I was driving to work, okay, and I was listening. I decided I want to listen to some Bullet for My Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is nostalgia, right?
Youth.
And then I realized, I had this epiphany that there are people right now that were born in 2008, right? And the album Fever that I was listening to came out in 2010. And these people are now 17. Bullet for My Valentine to them can be seen as a classic.
Yeah.
That's how old we are. Like,
No.
we were to have a kid, right? The stuff that we would be playing in the car are edgy, like...
My Chemical Romance is classic rock. I know.
It's crazy, dude.
On a deeply visceral level. It hurts.
It's just so crazy to me that, like, the stuff my dad listened to, you know, like Led Zeppelin, what else did he use? Like, I'm just Queen, right? Yeah. Like, we see them as classics.
No,
right? That we grew up, and they were great bands. We loved listening to them.
Yeah.
But now we have our own classics, which are like just these edgy, weird, emo, metal rock.
I don't think our classics have aged as well as our parents' classics.
Probably not.
No,
I don't know. Avril Lavigne's pretty up there.
Avril
if you felt it out,
Lavigne.
bit of karaoke, I think everyone's trying to do that.
No, I don't think anything from like the 90s, 2000s pop rock era is going to beat like the Beatles and Queen.
Imagine your kid just being like... Oh my mom, he's listening to Bullet for My Valentine again. It just blows my mind that's where we're at, you know, so my mortality was brought into question. And it was funny because the reason why I was talking about System of a Down earlier is I was listening because like, oh yeah, System of a Down, what a legendary band. They had so many great songs. And if like, there are probably so many kids these days that have never heard of System of a Down.
Because Chop Suey was like 90s, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
90s,
Even like
2000s.
Linkin Park who did the show where like, a lot of their stuff is early 2000s as well, like that we think of. Obviously, they still do stuff.
What's weirder is there's this middle group of people that know Linkin Park as the band from Transformers, from What I've Done.
Oh, no.
Do you remember when Transformers came out?
Yes, I
When
do.
Transformers came out, What I've Done was the song, right? Great song, obviously, but they didn't know about like Meteora, Numb.
Is that where Ovely May learned about them as well? Is that
Sadly for her, well, good for her in terms of memorable moments. Not so good from an embarrassment standpoint. No, that was not where she learned about.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring up that my mortality was brought into question.
Because I was just looking, Callista's 2006.
Oh,
yeah.
You know what?
I met that boy. He's really sweet. He's very earnest.
He's so nice. He's
a really nice guy. And we can talk about that later. But yeah, it really blows my mind that there's I guess fully grown people now.
Yeah.
What, 19 years old is 2006, and they're just.
I did get a TikTok that was like, "Oh yeah, can I see your ID?" It's like, "Oh no, you can't buy a drink. It's 2004." I was like, "Yeah, I'm 21." You're like, "Oh, oh,
yeah.
I don't like it.
Us millennials.
Yeah, so if you're at an LEC show and you ever want to like give casters an existential crisis when you're interacting with us, just say, "Oh yeah, I love the Arctic Monkeys. Classic rock is great." Just anything, like insert any band from the late 90s or early
really
to mid
upset
2000s.
me, yeah.
I would collapse.
Just someone walking up to me and being like, "Hey, Grandpa, you enjoying Sum 42?"
Yeah,
and you're just like, "No."
You're a fan and you think, and you really want to rile us up and you think it's hate messages. No, it's actually just making us come face to face with our own mortality. That's actually the key.
Anyway, I thought that would be fun, so I brought that topic up.
I respect it. Should we get into the episode?
Yeah,
well,
sure.
I actually have another thing that I want to bring up.
Is this where all the prep went?
See, So I thought the question was going to be when we start into this, because we do it every year. It's like what we do in the off season. But all I've been doing is moving house.
Yeah.
And like I did get to go to Switzerland with mom. It was lovely for a little bit, but like the majority of my stuff has been moving house. So I decided instead that I was going to bring a bit of Irish culture to you. So we had a bit of an atrocity over the weekend.
Yeah.
So we had a new monument that had just been recently brought up and had been found, and it actually got destroyed. So Barra, if you could bring up the photo. This is the Cherry Tomato Bridge in Dublin. And over Christmas, someone left cherry tomatoes out on a bridge in Drumcondra that then froze because the weather was so poor, and then became a monument that people went to visit and take photos with of these frozen cherry tomatoes. This became so big that people started to bring other cherry tomatoes to the bridge and offer them to the bridge. And now the cherry tomatoes have been destroyed. Someone came along and pushed them off the bridge, and this is including like there was tins of passata. People were AI photo generating photos of cherry tomatoes in suits. This became a whole thing, and they pushed them off the bridge, and someone smeared the passata and wrote their name in the passata, and now it's destroyed.
What is this world coming to, really?
But I have good news.
Good news.
The monument has been resurrected
Nice.
in New York. And I don't understand why. So I wanted to do an insight on Irish culture.
Nice.
That has
Thank
been
you.
happening over
Cool.
Christmas.
I like that.
I'm going
That's
to
a great
say
story.
that is about the best possible thing for me keeping my job that could have come out of your mouth after there's been an atrocity.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to get too political.
I
but I
was like,
you know?
what did Barra sign off on? Tomato Bridge?
That's nice. That's
Good,
very
wholesome, respect. Well, shout out to New York for keeping the Irish culture going. If we consider tomatoes Irish culture, I don't know.
Frozen cherry tomatoes.
Frozen cherry tomatoes
On a bridge.
specifically, wherever you are in the world.
TM soon, you know.
If it's not going to get you into legal trouble, feel free to emulate this. Maybe we can make it a worldwide phenomenon. The cherry tomato bridge. Really bring us all together.
Now think of a clever transition.
You can't say meta stuff like that, 'cause that's obviously what I'm trying to do. I don't have a cover transition. So again, two things we're going to be doing today.
Let's
to
bridge
make
the gap,
Let's
shall
bridge
we?
the gap. Let's talk a little bit about season 2025. Welcome to Noxus, where the strong are rewarded and where they wouldn't let Rob punch me in the face to really emphasize that point. But we did ask.
I still get to do it though, right?
Yeah. Because now I've told them. I've kept this hidden at the end of the episode. You're going to punch me in the face. Yeah, strong rewards, Noxus lore, yada, yada, yada. But more importantly for us League of Legends players out there, there's a lot of changes. Mm-hmm. They feel weird and I don't like them. I'm not opposed to them, but as a boomer, as we've highly established now, I'm like, there's always something going on.
Yes.
And it's overwhelming.
That is exactly how I would describe it. Yeah. I was talking to Medic about it yesterday, and I said that the way I would describe the new season is it's overwhelming. Yeah. I think I have a greater appreciation for objectives now than I used to. Yeah. I think when I'm playing solo queue and I'm just in the flow, I will forget the dragon spawning soon or that grubs are up and stuff like that.
Yeah, I never cared about dragons or grubs.
Now I'm mega invested.
Feats of strength. The fact that they get something for the rest of the game that I don't get. I've never cared as much about Dragon Soul.
I have never felt so bad giving away First Blood. Like, First Blood feels horrific. I'm like, not only have I just lost my lane, I've now lost the entire game for my team.
I'm of the opinion that Feats of Strength is not that big of a deal.
No.
I think that it was a little of a high. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the context of Pro, it would be very different. Yeah. But in my solo queue games, it doesn't feel that crazy.
I hate people throwing that stat around that it's like, oh my God, they have almost a 70% win rate. I'm like, yes, if you get First Blood, get the majority of the objectives and First Tower, chances are you're winning the game.
Maybe we should look at what the stats were for winning the game when you got those three things instead of your +5 armor boots with the potential for 750 gold to get more. That said, I do feel it. I know, because I wasn't reading the patch notes, I was just playing to get the experience, and I read the patch notes, and I was like, these boot upgrades, I feel like I'm so strong. Not the ones you pay for, not tier 3, tier 2 boot upgrades. And then I read the notes and realized how small the upgrade was. And I'm like,
so I went with the symbiotic. I basically was messing around. I went with Pike with the symbiotic soul upgrades, which is the movement speed upgrades.
Right.
Then I went Youngwood's Ghostblade, and then had the Death Guard, the home guards coming out of base. Mm-hmm. And I reached 1,600 movement speed running out of base. I flew up mid to do whatever I wanted. It was phenomenal.
I can't remember if you were in this normal game, but was playing this game. I was playing Katarina, and I had the, I don't know, I forget what boots I was running, but my base movement speed, when we'd had 3 Cloud Dragons plus Atakhan, my base movement speed was like 435.
Yeah,
and every time I pressed W, the one where you throw your dagger in the air,
decaying
I went up to like 480. And like there was this hilarious moment where a Garen was trying to chase me and I outran him. I straight up just outran him. He just couldn't keep up with me. And I will say that like there are certain things that feel very strong. There are certain, like, the worst feeling right now for me is when Atakhan and Dragon both together are alive and you lose that fight. That feels really bad.
Yeah.
Losing both the Dragon
There's
and
no
the Atakhan.
cross-map play. You're
feel
just
like,
sitting there.
And honestly, I feel like that's the way I would describe it right now. It feels hard to cross-map. And again, this is very much based on my solo queue experiences. I expect it to be very different. I've spoken to a few people in the scene and they like it. They like having something very clear to play for at every point, because in the past, dragons down, grubs are down, and how often have we casters have said, well, basically both these teams are just waiting for the next objective to spawn, right? And often like they find it hard to play for tier 2 objectives. But what they explained to me was that right now, if they're going for like 3rd dragon, or if like you can make the choice to sacrifice the feats for like a tier 2 or something, or like there is always something that you can be trading on the map. You just have to be very, very aware and have a good setup.
Yeah, I do think though, like we'll end up seeing teams trend towards more early game compositions. Like I know people are kind of going, oh, well, with dives and stuff like that being harder to do, you can go for like the jinxes and stuff like that. But I think because you've got, well, the feats early, the dragons you can still stack. And then Atakhan is just so strong if you can get him. Because either you get the Ruinous Atakhan, which is you get the plus 25% on all of your epic monster stats.
And a bunch of flowers, which is a ton of XP.
Yeah, a ton of XP and a bunch of adaptive force as well.
Yeah.
But it means that then you're able to, if you've already got an early game composition that can stack dragons, now if it's a bloody game, I get this. If not, and it's a slow game, I just get this broken buff that lets me dive your inhibitor turrets because I'm not going to give you over all this gold. Whoever I kill doesn't respawn as fast as I can, and I just come back in and do it again. So especially if you can get like an early Atakhan buff, you can potentially fight for an early Baron with this, if you can get it like say 22.5 minutes, whatever, and then you have potential for tower diving. Like, it feels like early game got such a strong buff if you can play through all this. And even looking at LPL, like a bunch of the 80 carries we're seeing are still like the Ashes, the Varuses that spike off 2 items, MFs and stuff like that can actually like work in that system.
I also think the home guards and the death guards really strong.
Yeah.
I find that I play mid, and often you find yourself like getting into a fight with the enemy mid laner. One of you dies and the jungler doesn't stick around to help you push out your wave, right? So you now have to manually push it. You push that wave in, enemy mid's back already. You've got low death timers, they can get back to lane real quick. But I do find like, and maybe I'm just imagining things because the last season, because we had 3 seasons, right? So season 3 of 2024, that third part, I didn't really play much solo queue. But I find that death timers in the mid game feel very long. So, and I wonder, like, I haven't been tracking this, but you feel, and it might just be because there's so many objectives to play for on the map. I feel like dying in the mid game is way more punishing than it was before. And again, maybe I'm just, I don't know, imagining it because there's just so much going on in the game right now. But that's how it feels like, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like all the changes you talked about do lead to early game feeling faster. Just much faster,
100%.
right? Like not being able to stack waves as easily with the minion changes.
A subtle change too. Yeah.
Subtle change, but like especially for the average viewer of EUphoria. I know you guys are all challenger, but when you play in your Smurfs at gold, right? Like, and people aren't perfectly last hitting at the lowest possible health values. Like that stuff makes a big difference in terms of how good you are at actually controlling and manipulating your wave. On top of that, death guards. On top of that, I've been doing a lot of research with Rob on what early deaths do to affect bot lane. And I'll be honest, it has just felt like I'm a psycho when I play bot lane with Rob. Yeah. And I don't have the hands to back it up, right?
So
but I
to give
like
people context. Drakos got the new set skin. So Drakos needed to play
Don't
set
ask me how many rolls. I don't want to hear anyone asking me how many rolls. I get all chatted every game minus 1,000 euros.
Wait, how do you get the new set
How
skin?
did you remortgage?
You have to, like,
it's one of the ones you have to roll. You get a certain
You have to
chain.
roll
You have
for
to
it?
buy the rolls, or you have to buy the currency and you get a thing. And then there's like a certain after 80 rolls, you're guaranteed to get the
that's a
set skin.
pity.
And it also
Yeah,
it has
yeah,
spawned my new favorite bit, which is Medic just saying that his dad works for Rise. In every game.
Every all chat, they're like minus 1,000 euros, and which I don't think it's 1,000. I don't know what it is, so don't hold me to that. That's just what they say. And then Medic's like, guys, it's fine. His dad works for
Right.
but anyway,
Wait, but did you pity?
no, I didn't pity.
Okay,
I didn't go all the
okay,
way to pity.
okay.
I was actually reasonably lucky, but still, it was a moment of weakness in terms of my. So I didn't need it, but I wanted it. It had a little snake on the back, reminded
Now
me of
you
Dark
understand
Souls
why
boss.
Lost Ark's so
Yeah.
addictive.
I get it. I understand. But yeah, I was playing set support, which isn't good, and also I was picking it early, and I was hoping that they wouldn't figure it out. They figured. I played against a Seraphine, played against an Anivia support.
Yeah.
Terrible matchups. I fed gratuitously, but I got back to lane pretty fast.
Yep.
I felt less behind in terms of overall XP and gold, and in general, like I've
I've had fun.
Yeah.
It is, I will say, going to be really interesting to see how this transitions to pro. As you highlighted, I think the changes are probably positive. I think from a casting perspective, it's positive because
Oh, yeah.
there's always something on the map happening. And while I think that was true, it was really hard to explain or make the significance of like certain lull states of the game where they're setting up or thinking 2 or 3 waves ahead. Like, it feels so intangible as a viewer when we get to that level of, hey, 90 seconds from now, they're going to be doing this. So they need to think about when the reset is. Like, it just feels like gobbledygook, I think, for so many people. So it's nice to be able to say, here's this thing that's coming. You can see it. You can see it very clearly. Like, it's not mini-map based. Observers can show you. There's these roses on the ground. They matter.
Yeah.
There's this thing. It matters.
It does feel like if you hit tab though, like you're looking at the entrance to a theme park though, where there's just like
it's
all
so
this stuff at the
overwhelming.
top where
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
hey, it's red Atakhan, black Atakhan, you've got Baron, you've got Rift Herald, you've got Void Grubs, you've got Dragons, you've got whatever the hell else is going on.
Yeah, I definitely, overwhelming is definitely a word that I would use for sure. And I feel pressure is the best way to describe it, because I feel as though it's a weird one, because to me it's very clear that you need a jungler that can skirmish. That's why Viego, Wukong, you mentioned the Pantheon to me earlier. I also saw that. Pantheon makes a lot of sense to me because you basically want junglers that can skirmish. Skarner, still very strong. But basically you need stuff that can fight and has agency, the ability to contest objectives. And then you sit there and go, well, okay, well then what makes the most sense in mid? And then you go, well, wave clear, right? So mages naturally rise in priority. And so you sit there and you go, okay, so you've got a skirmish heavy jungler and you've got a wave clear heavy mid, which things like Azir, Victor, Orianna. I've seen Aurora a lot.
We got Tank Silas today in the LPL.
Yeah, so
which was interesting.
Leader was the one that introduced me to that, where he was going the winter. Wow,
This was Riftmaker,
Winter?
Hollow Radiance.
The tier
Frozen
item?
Hearts.
Oh, interesting,
Yeah.
because he was, I saw Leader doing Winter plus, I think he also did Riftmaker, and then he also did something else. It may have been Hollow Radiance. But yeah, it's, I think that the game right now, kind of, you feel like you have to contest everything, but I feel like in pro play, it's not going to be like that, because I think they're going to trade more, right? Because there's only a 1 minute difference between Dragon and Grubs, and so it's hard to contest both, which leads me to think like, okay, one team will get Dragon, the other team will get Grubs, and then it'll just keep kind of trading as the game goes on, would be my instinct.
I think that one of the things, part of the reason I like the change is because it feels like there's this pressure on. It makes me feel like I need to coordinate more with my team, and that, like, the actions that you're taking in lane have a bigger effect. But it's funny because when you look at it, like, most of what's pushing that for me is just the feats of strength. And I think pros will quickly figure out, as you highlighted, like how valuable that actually is. And it will either A, be really important, in which case it'll define everything, or B, it won't be important at all. And I think it will exist in those binaries where it's just like, it either matters, in which case it'll define the pace of the game, or it doesn't matter at all, in which case it'll still be the same thing, maybe similar to last year, maybe not, where it's like, well, Grubs are higher prio, we prefer Grubs, or one objective will be the higher prio, they go to that.
I think Atakhan skews all that. Because you can get this plus 25%, right? It's kind of hard to say, not for the feats of strength as much, but like for how strong is a Void Grub? Well, have we been fighting a lot? Like, do I get the plus 25% extra damage on Terra? Because that actually makes a pretty big difference for that damage. Then also, like, have I stacked early Dragons? Like, if I get 2 Mountain Souls plus 25% extra because I got like the Atakhan buff. Like that's insane. And also then just the Voracious one as well. That buff where you just get the GA is insane.
But look, you get additional gold on kills too.
Yeah.
That's the permanent stuff. So two things. The first one is that the boots, the first time I felt like, I don't know how I feel about these boots was when I was playing Victor, sat on 2,000 gold, and I went back to base and I was like, I can buy large rod plus boots. But then I was like, I'm delaying my death cap. And at that point in the game, I thought to myself, I'd rather have the death cap than the upgraded boots. Like, I feel like I've kind of missed my window to buy these boots, but I ended up doing it because the gold worked out, right? I didn't have enough for a second large rod, so I just bought the boots. And so I thought to myself, like, obviously this isn't a negative, right? Yeah. But they're still 750 gold for what I think is a worthwhile upgrade. But I thought to myself in that moment, like, oh, actually, that was the first time I asked myself, how worth are these boots right now?
They definitely feel good, like in the sense that they all have these little actives that matter.
100%.
I mean, just again, playing set, you build Celestial Opposition, I built Dead Man's Plate, and then I had the boots, the upgraded boots that give you movement speed, so you have an additional 4% on top of that without the restrictions. I don't know the exact math, but you go fast. Like, I felt that difference. Yeah. Hitting people and seeing them have their Merc Treads or Plated Steel Cap shield, so annoying. So annoying. So it definitely feels good, but I'm sure it, like a lot of these things, a lot of the changes they made, I have very strong feelings about, but I think that when the math comes out and we see how more of how pro is played, 100%. It'll be very clear like how good these things actually are.
Think you also need to be an exceptionally good team to be able to punish properly off of that.
Yeah,
like if I'm able to move around the map faster than you, whether I can then transition through certain parts of the map quicker or get to places faster than you, I can probably get like an extra wave to a turret that I can maybe take half your HP on a turret because I'm just faster and I can use that advantage.
The movement speed, like you passively just get, I mean, you do get movement speed on everything, right? Because everything gets +5, I think, as a base.
Yeah, I believe so.
But yeah, but the other thing about Atakhan that you were talking about is the thing I like about it is that it feels more meaningful than a 20-minute Baron did.
Yeah, it does.
Because 20-minute Barons, when they happened, outside of like, you can find exceptions, like JDG was a team back in 23, I think, that when they got Baron, they just won, right?
Yes,
and that was the one with Knight and Ruler in the roster. And there are other examples of teams that when they got 20-minute Barons, they just immediately ended the game. But by and large, 20-minute Barons resulted in maybe a tier 2s, a few tier 2s falling, and then the tier 3s were still alive, and then we're waiting for the next Baron, or maybe the 3rd or 4th dragon. Atakhan, I feel, is a meaningful buff in the sense that that buff is not going to end you the game there, but it is going to give you a very meaningful advantage, which can then very quickly help you push your lead even further. And so, do I think it's too much? I haven't decided yet, because at 20 minutes, ideally, you want to be getting to a point where, like, I think Elder is appropriately strong because when Elder is alive, the game should be ending,
yeah,
right?
I agree.
So it's powerful enough that basically once you've got it, you should be winning, right? That I very much agree with. But I'm like, do I think Atakhan is too powerful for where it's at in the game? I don't know. It's hard for me to say right now.
I like the progression of power because 20-minute Baron was really cool as like a 1,500 bag of gold for a team that was behind to kind of even the slate, whether that was buying themselves more time against the team that was ahead or for a team that was really far ahead to just end the game immediately. But there were a lot of circumstances where like 20 early Barons, just you got a couple tier 2s, you extended your already decently sized gold lead, but you weren't far enough ahead to break the base.
Yeah.
And those are, if this cuts down on those kind of Baron buffs, which it will a little bit by default just because Baron spawns later, I'm happy because a lot of the Barons that we saw domestically in LEC last year that happen around that 21-22 minute mark, either the team is smashing and they're just going to end the game, or you have the other version is the awkward Baron where it's like they got Baron, they took the big objective, they took the tier 2s, but they can't push it any further. So we're waiting for the next Baron, and then the game is going to end. So if it cuts down on that, like I think it's from at least from my caster POV, I think it's pretty good.
The hardest part for me to like judge Atakhan is because a lot of my takes are from solo queue at the moment. Like I'm watching a little bit of LPL, but like in solo queue, half the team has bloody forgotten that this thing exists.
100%.
So like,
I
you
have-
rob
I
them
have
and you're like,
number
oh my
of
god, it's gone.
I have never played against the non-ravenous Atakhan.
Yeah.
I have never seen.
I've seen it
voracious,
once.
yeah.
I had it once on a Jarvan, and it was so funny because I basically told my team, I wrote in chat, I'm diving, and they were all like, question mark, and we dove the tier 3, and they were all just sitting there killing me. They took the tower, and they were like, oh. And I was like, yeah, that's just what you
That's
can do.
the bug.
That's
Exactly, yeah.
that.
It's so
you
strong.
just die,
It's the
and then they get
secret
100
Easter egg
gold.
on it. It does not exist. I have not played a game with it
it's
yet.
mega cool, but
The problem that I have with it is I don't know how to judge it because the damage isn't that high, but the shred is insane. Like because it takes all your armor and magic
the
resist.
thing itself.
No,
So like
Atakhan
how
the
easy
monster,
it is
yeah.
to take.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where I'm trying to figure out because one of the things that I know is that like if I go to do dragon, I am committed to dragon pit, and it means that I am kind of brought into this area where I am walled off. If the other team comes and surrounds me, I'm fighting my way out of a corner. Same when you look at Baron Pit, that doesn't happen with Atakhan. Because of where he spawns, there's no pit, essentially. So it means that then I can always back off or I can always walk away. And it makes it much more difficult to try and set up, I think, to pincer a team into those positions or force them to take fights. So if the shred is so high, I still feel like teams can almost test the waters with Atakhan easier and then back away. But if the shred is just absolutely insane, I think it becomes very difficult then for teams to really take it unless they've already brought a fight beforehand. So that's where I don't know the actual level of it, because in solo queue it feels like by the time I wrangle my team together the objective's already gone, and I don't know if that's going to be the same in pro play where you can almost like sneak an Atakhan with a few people, or whether it has to be a whole team wide where you're going to fight. And I think that's the piece I'm holding off for, to see basically where that lands. Is it a team thing that has to be done, or can you have 2 or 3 people sneak it away when you're not really paying attention and then you end up taking it? Or is the enemy team actually able to fight back because the shred is so big, and suddenly that becomes the actual game defining moment of enemy team is down 4,000 gold, they try to do Atakhan, the shred's nuts, the enemy team gets a big comeback and they get Atakhan buff, and then they get all these extra dives that are cheap and they can suddenly blow the game open, right? I think that's where I'm waiting to see how that feels in a pro setting versus a solo queue setting.
I will say that this is the most dramatic change that I have felt, and the most dramatic change in terms of like how uncertain it makes me feel from expectations. Because I remember getting really hyped about Dragon Rifts. I don't think Dragon Rifts impacted pro really whatsoever, right?
much,
like
no.
not really.
Hex
Outside of
gates are great.
when Chemtech was great. And Hex Gates are cool. Like it's all cool.
Those even came later.
Yeah, but I don't, when those were introduced, it was kind of novelty, but it didn't feel like it really changed the way I played the game or thought about the game, and it wasn't enough of a variable that I would really change this discussion. Like we'd hit dragons really quick, we can probably move on. But this is definitely the combination of Atakhan and the feats of strength, I think, is enough that it's like solo queue now feels like it will have, like it's always been different than pro play, but it might be even more dramatically different than pro play in a massive way this year. And it's fun because there's just so much that I don't know, and we need to see how pros are going to interact with it. And I'm excited about it, John.
Well, I mean, the other advantage is now, I mean, shout out to LCS, now LTA.
Yeah.
Paving the way forward for live patch pro play.
100%.
Because now we're doing it.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a scam in winter. It's a little bit, only because the way that our format works is when playoffs rolls around, you lock a patch for competitive integrity.
And our regular season for winter is
It's 3 weeks.
It's 3 weeks. So we're playing on
We're going to
one
get one patch on week 1, and then I think we get another patch for, I don't know the patch cadence, so I won't speak. But
we'll have 1 or 2 patches. We're not going to get the full live experience that we will
spring.
get.
You'll experience a lot more.
Yeah.
Spring and summer for sure.
But our winter split, but the idea, so historically, I won't speak for the casters, but for me, I avoid live gameplay patch notes.
Because you don't want to mess yourself up.
Yeah, so for my colleagues, this has been a real pain for them because they like Drakos. It makes a regular meme, but like, have you read the patch notes? And I'm like, no, I can't read the patch notes because they'll get in the way of my current patch notes. And he's like, but like, I still need you to know the things that are on that patch note. And I'm like, well, you're not wrong.
Yeah, but like pro plays on this patch, and so I play solo queue, and I just don't think about what's happening on the patch.
But it's also, I don't think people realize how much it does mess you up, because it sounds
really
like,
does.
oh, you clearly just know, no, this is live and this the other. It's like, no, there are so many patch notes, and then like a random champion comes out and you're like, was that 2 patches? Was that this patch? Was this the new patch
So,
where I got the thing? Or
great
where's the
example
thing?
of this,
Yeah.
static shiv has changed again.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
And I didn't know that because it was happening in one of the patches. I think it happened on 14.24 or 14.23. So it happened in a period of time where like Worlds was no longer happening, but I wasn't playing League. And so I played the game recently and was like, oh, so now it's got 3 charges and now it seems to work a little differently. And it's just one of those things where like, I'm now personally very happy that it's live because it's easier. But also I think it makes it exciting because one of the big arguments was, people come to pro to learn about what they can play today. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, that now you can literally tune into pro this weekend, see what Faker is playing, see what your favorite pro is playing, and be like, if he thinks it's good, then it probably is good on my patch as well. And like that will carry over. And I do think that's a genuinely very cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, like the worst example of this is when we had Static Shiv LeBlanc earlier this year for like a month when it was already gutted in everyone. So like the pro game and the pro draft experience was like, which of these champions abuse Static Shiv the best for basically a month, I want to say, because I think there were 2 patches where they tried to nerf and it didn't really take. And then everyone playing at home is like, well, either they foolhardily believe that LeBlanc with Static Shiv is good on the patch they're playing on, or they know and they go, well, this is super useful for me. Even if they're not playing for that joy or to learn, let's say, from pro play in the same way that maybe some other people are, it's still like, I didn't get extra out of this kind of data. Obviously, with Fearless coming up, it's a big thing to talk about. We're going to skip over it, though, for now, because our first 3 weeks are best of 1.
Yep.
And obviously, in best of 1, there is no Fearless. So this is...
Everything's Fearless, actually.
We
just never realized. Yeah.
Everything is Fearless in a best of 1. But I think more important, off-season. So we've had a ton of changes, of course, across our teams. Let me check. I think I wrote down the total number, although I didn't get a double check. So, flying...
Oh, yeah, I didn't actually track the number of changes. No. We just had a bunch of them.
27 out of 50 players were changed, not removed for the league, but a lot of them moved to other teams. 5 players that have existed in the ecosystem but weren't here last year or last season came back. That's Jojo, Gen X, Reeker, Malrang, and Execute, who used to be known as Jonghoon. And then 10 rookies, although the rookie status... rookies to the LEC at the very least, the rookie rules have changed over years in terms of who would count for like a Rookie of the Split award. So I'm not sure 100% whose time in like an LLA or equivalent would disqualify them. But basically 10 new players that have certainly not played in an LEC, LTA, LPL, or LCK capacity. So a lot of changes. And the question kind of today, guys, is who are the biggest winners and losers in this offseason? Who has the most dramatic changes? Because it's 10 rosters, a lot to cover. But
where should we start? Because do you want to do winners, losers, or what
let me see what I wrote down. I had an opinion let's start losers. So we can end on let's start losers so we can end on a positive.
Okay.
You know?
So who's going first?
Hey, who wants to go first? Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to
you start.
Be toxic.
Nice.
So, I mean,
setting a good example for the kids.
Yeah, I think what I'm about to say is kind of mean, so I apologize in advance. But I do think that Heretics was the biggest off-season loser. So the whole roster basically got rebuilt outside of Flacked, right? They've brought in Shio, which is like another veteran in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's fair to say he's a veteran at this point. Like, and obviously, I think that there's a big debate around whether he's underrated or not. But I think great player, ultimately. Part of a very successful BDS roster that found themselves top 3 consistently throughout the year last year. And a jungler that had a great awareness and a good understanding of the game. Very high level, great player. I do not think that Sheo and Flacked as a foundation is enough to elevate 3 rookies. Yeah. And one of those rookies is a Division 2 mid laner as well. He's like, so I looked into this a little bit. So to put it into context.
Hold on, really quick. Can you just read the full roster for people at home? Just in case someone has missed out.
Carlson, Sheo, Camilo, Flacked, and Stend.
And in this case, you're talking about Camilo.
Yeah, so Camilo, French player, right? And he came from Division 2 of the LFL, right? So bear in mind, in the LFL, in playoffs, summer playoffs, I looked this up last night, in their mid laners were Rika, Abadage, Shajek, Shekolad, Dior, and then Peng. So Peng is the one that I'm the least familiar with. But of those 5 names, former LEC, or I think Dior also played in LCS, if my memory is correct. And they're either currently going to the LEC, right? And that's not including any of the other LFL mid laner players. And basically, a lot of these players were passed over, and then he was then brought up from Division 2. Now, I'm not going to make speculations about how good of a player he is, because the truth is I haven't gone through his games. I don't have a great understanding. Yeah. But to go from Division 2 to the LEC, we've seen winners of EMEA Masters join the LEC and then be like the worst performing mid laner in the league. And that's not to say that they were bad players. It's more to say that the LEC level is just very high and a difficult environment to adjust with.
Sure.
And he's playing with a lot of rookies. So I just think that there's a lot of expectations on his shoulders. And on paper, it's hard for me to believe that he's just going to come in and this roster is going to be incredibly strong. So I don't think that Heretics are great.
I actually did watch some of his games. And
nice.
He actually, like, his mechanics are fine, but the games are so chaotic. It's impossible to get a good read of, hey, do you actually like understand how to play a side lane? Do you understand how to do certain things? Because it feels like the game is taking its own course and he kind of has to slot in the best he can. So the only like caveat I'd add to it is, you're looking at my screen.
No, because I was going to say the same thing and I'll just shut up because I now realize you're going to say it.
Yeah, because Jackie's was the one that I was going to say, because Jackie's was basically brought out of nowhere, right? Like Hit Point Masters wasn't exactly in a tier 1 region, didn't even go to a lot of went to EMEA, tried to qualify for EMEA Masters, but never actually got into it.
He was the money ball.
Yeah, exactly. They had like this algorithm that was going to sort them out, but if that has been applied and like that works, cool. Like maybe we end up with something like Jackie's, where like Jackie's has been a great fit and has really started to grow into his own, and I think he's going to have a great year coming into this one. But that's a lot of caveats, because it's like, hey, you're hoping that this is what they've gone for. You're hoping he's able to live up to that. And this is not to say like I'm already throwing him out the door. It's just there's a lot that needs to be seen. And as you've already said, Vedi, like you're going up against like Caps and like,
well, and it's just
this
like,
is a lot.
even if they're, they hit the ground running, it's like the core that you're built around are two players with, Sheo, I think, is the more stable of the two, even though Flacket had higher ceilings during his time on G2. But neither of these players, would you say, are like, have you seen enough of at a high enough level that you're like, yeah, this is the guy you're building around. Like, this is your carry. This is your blank. This is your blank. And I think part of that is because Sheo's just pretty much, we've only seen him in the context of the BDS rosters that he's played on, which isn't a huge sample size. But for Flacket, right, we've seen he's like, when he's in his element, he's good, but he's definitely not like, he hasn't consistently been like a top 2, top 3 80 carry in our league. And so if that's the core you're building around and everyone else is a rookie, even if you believe in their potential, it's like you're not set up to have a good winter. And I think it would be unfair to expect people to be like, I really believe in this roster for winter. Like you can make an argument for long term, spring, summer, sure, if you believe in these players and their potential, but right out the gate, no.
This is I think this would be a great EMEA Masters roster. Yeah. I know that sounds bad, but it's like I can actually see the
there's a lot of really good EMEA Masters rosters in LEC.
I think even when you look at like Sheo, Sheo's in my eyes, he's not very good at like playing these engaged champions or the engaged junglers. I think he's much more of a like follow-up for what Lebrov was. And I think Stent can basically be that like Lebrov for him, because he played on Vitality B last year. Like we saw him in EMEA Masters finals. He was great at all these engages and stuff. And I think he will still like slot in as a good jungle support like duo for this team. But it's the like carry potential from behind the scenes is where I'm unsure. And that's where I think like I would love to be surprised by Camilo. Maybe he pops the hell off. But we've seen Flacket he doesn't step up to take the reins. He kind of wants to be that more supportive AD carry. Like he will go to a dragon when there's a big wave that's crushing bot because he thinks that's what the team needs, right? Yeah. And I think it's that's where you need Camilo to step up. And I think it's unfair to put a lot of that pressure onto him coming up into this roster. So I don't have the faith that Heretics is going to be able to pop off in the way that I think a lot of Spanish fans will be hoping for.
My summary is that I just think they're too inexperienced for me to believe in them for winter.
Yeah.
I'm fine to have that opinion change, but like in my tier list, they are unfortunately at the bottom. So that's why I put them as the biggest losers of the
I think super fair. Rob, who's your biggest loser?
So I still rate them relatively highly, but I think the biggest loser outside of Heretics for me is actually BDS. I think the fact that they've completely changed the roster takes away a huge amount of what made this roster special. Like, I think Irrelevant is a great player. I think Paris is going to be a great player. The core of this roster, though, was consistency. We know exactly how we're going to set up every time. We know exactly how we're going to play this situation. We know exactly how everything is going to unfold and how everyone in this roster slots in together. You've now changed 3 of those core pieces. Yes, you brought in Irrelevant, who's good. 113 likes to cause chaos. Like we saw when he was in the LEC, back when he was on Astralis, we saw it when he was in the EMEA Masters. This is a guy that wants to invade. He wants to try and mess up the enemy jungle. He wants to try and make things a bit wonky. And I think that's the exact opposite of what BDS has been. And I don't know then how that core of BDS or that identity for BDS now fits with this team.
My thing is like, I guess my struggle is when I look at this team, I don't see them winning. And I saw old BDS not winning, but I also saw old BDS pretty much always getting top 4.
Yeah.
And now that's in question.
Well,
but I
top
also
3 all year.
Yeah, we're top 3, right? Like they're a consistent top team in our league, even if they couldn't usually beat the top 2 if they struggled in those final hurdles. And now it's like, I see these changes you've made. If what you tell me is we need a team that can win the whole thing, I believe you. But then I look at this roster and I'm not sold. Now, Paris, we need to see. I need to see how good he's going to be with
Paris.
Ice.
Does look sick.
Paris looks good, and to be fair, Ice it's very stable. One of the best, if not the best, AD carries in our league last season. Up there with some other names
100%.
for sure. Nuke has grown. This will be a big test to see more of what he looks like in other environments. Definitely, and Irrelevant is good, but does this feel to me like a shoe-in to win the whole thing? No. And I think that's kind of where BDS from an expectation standpoint should be if they're going to rebuild their roster.
Yeah, I ultimately think that BDS and G2 found themselves in similar positions where they felt as though they weren't getting any further with where they were at with their existing roster, so they had to make changes, right? Yeah. And so I definitely understand the argument of why you could feel that way, because you look at the roster on paper and you can see pros and you can see cons. For me, BDS is definitely a big question mark. I want to give 113 a fresh start because my perception of him was on Astralis, which wasn't like
was a difficult roster for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and different players perform differently in different environments, right? And him being given a new opportunity at the LEC, I think is fair enough, and I want to see how he does, because the truth is that you look at the solo lane, the carries of BDS, exceptionally good players. Nuke grew into one of the best mid laners of 2024. Ice, as you already highlighted, he was consistently voted All-Pro. Sometimes I forget which splits it was, but he was either 1, 2, or 3.
I mean,
right?
I know at the very least we were always screaming at each other about Ice.
Correct.
Because someone was always not putting Ice on their list, and we were always mad about
There was
them.
always excessive debate around where he should be, but definitely one of the best performing AD carries. And then Irrelevant, community, everyone said that he was jailed in SK in a sense. And he's a very versatile player. I think that he's one of, if not the best Jax player in the league. Talent wise, you sit there and you look at this roster and you think, yeah, they got talent. Like Paris, I think he was one of the most desirable supports in the off season. And I'm sure they would have loved to have kept Lebrov, but I also can't blame Lebrov for when you get a G2 offer. That's just the organization that wins, and to get to play with Caps is something that I think every pro player would love to be a part of. And I think that if they had kept Lebrov, maybe you'd be a little bit more optimistic because you've got that known quantity. But yeah, I think that it's fair to be skeptical, and I think but I totally understand. I very much think that if you're the manager of this team and you sit there and go, okay, we got third place, 3 splits in a row. We need to change. Something's got to change.
And the thing was, a lot of their self-stated goals that we saw bits and pieces of was progressing beyond the steady, reliable, objective-focused team. But then when push came to shove, every single time when the pressure was on, they had to shift back to that. And so it's at a certain point, you're just like, well, clearly this evolution isn't going to happen without making a bigger change. And in this case, it's roster changes.
And I think that's where, for me, I want to see Irrelevant almost have that evolution, because I think Irrelevant is very good in his style, which is he's the Jax guy, he's the carry guy, he's going to be able to exactly player. But I do think at certain points, especially in a meta where I think tanks are very strong,
Cassante was always good, to be fair.
Yeah. But I think it's I do want to see him now. Can he step into a more team fighting orientated team? Because SK was not that. SK was actually quite focused on him and being able to control a side lane and play in the 1v1 and play as Jax, and he would play very well in a team fight, but it's not the same setup as I think BDS needs. Because Nuke is a carry, Ice is a carry, Irrelevant is a carry, and there's too many cooks that are trying to steal the ingredients there. And I think that's where it's going to could end up looking messy. And I'm curious to see how they work. And if this team comes in looking absolutely terrible and then suddenly turns around, I honestly think BDS is up there for some of the best coaching staff we've ever had in the LEC. Because the fact that they have consistently worked with the team last year, and now if they can work and kind of mold this roster into something special as well, I think it speaks volumes to the behind the scenes staff.
Yeah. For me, it's Irrelevant feels he's obviously nuanced. He has his own identity, but kind of like a side grade. 113 immediate, and Paris immediately I would expect to be downgrades, but maybe long term they grow into more. But it is a gambit for BDS, much more obviously than it is for a G2, for example, who get to keep, Caps is the best player in the league and single-handedly won G2 mini games, and Broken Blade is also a strong swing lane. Like G2 took a risk that I understand or makes more sense to me, and I think is less of an overall risk than the one that BDS took. That said, I want to shift over to the biggest winners.
Yeah.
I'm saying GIANTX, boys.
I also put down GIANTX.
This is the biggest Did Fnatic just forget that they had a top 3 bot lane for most of the year? Like, did GIANTX just roll over and go like, no one's going to take this? Like, yeah, Noah, Jun, come over. Like, as much as I gave a lot of flack to Noah over the course of the year, because I think that there were some games where he struggled, like, for the most part, he was good.
People remembered the failures naturally because they were in the biggest moments, but that's the thing. They were always in the biggest moments.
Yeah, they got to the biggest moments. In the
regular season, like, these guys were really good. They definitely, I very much think that when you think of, like, GIANTX, the best placement last year was 6th place. Mm-hmm. So as winners, oh yeah, big winners.
Huge
like
winners.
Grabbing Closer, a big difference maker in terms of changing what KC were throughout the entire year, what he brought. I mean, we were big advocates of Closer on his time on KC, right? Yeah. So I really think that, like, having Jackies as your centerpiece, someone that we did criticize a fair amount. Like, I remember you saying a lot, he got caught on side lanes like a bunch. Like, his awareness of map position was something that was critical of him. But he's been heavily grinding. I saw him in all those off-season games at the end of last year. So, like, in terms of winners, in terms of the roster that they got, I think GIANTX definitely.
Just to recap before you make your point, GIANTX is Lot, newcomer, Closer, who played on KC previously, Jackies, who is the only remaining player from last year's summer roster, and then Noah and Jun, who've been brought over from Fnatic, just for anyone who hasn't been keeping up with the roster info.
I'm not as hyped on these as you guys, because I think the consistency is the problem for me. Like, GIANTX were a good team last year who got leads and consistently could not close out a game. And it was like, look, there was Jackies getting caught in weird positions. There was a bunch of other people getting caught in weird positions. Do I think Noah and Jun solved that? No. Like, this was the problem that Fnatic had. Jun was getting caught in weird positions towards the end of the year.
Sure.
Noah was getting caught in weird positions towards the end of the year and couldn't consistently carry fights. The biggest problem for me in this team is not that I don't think they'll be able to get early leads. It's I don't trust anyone to actually be able to fully say, hey, I'm going to take this game by the horns and bring it across the line. And even, like, I'm not going to throw a lot of shade at Lot because he's only new here. But, like, when I did watch his games, he was very good in a laning phase scenario, but once it got to the mid game, I think he was also a little bit lost in the map. And GIANTX last year, the coaching staff proved to me they don't know how to teach people how to play a map state well. So if you are still struggling with that, I don't know how these changes fix it. I think your early game is going to be sick. Like, you have great talent on this roster. And you already said, I agree. I think Closer is really becoming one of the best junglers and up there for junglers in the LEC that we have. But, like, consistently when we get to the mid game, I don't trust this team.
My only counterpoint to the top lane point is I think the top lane pool in Europe is just weak.
But
also,
it's still
the only thing, just a point of order. They have Gyoto came over. Now, whatever you think about Gyoto, he's been on some incredibly good teams and some incredibly bad teams. They've brought in a lot of different people, and then that was in November of last year, and then they brought in a performance coach as well for start of this year. So, from a coaching staff perspective, I think it's fair to say, like, this is what you were good at last year, and, like, you're going to need to show more mid-game, late game, but giving the coaching staff a clean slate, because it's mostly or entirely...
Yeah, if it's new staff, then I'm a little bit more...
and we'll have to see.
But, yeah, I need to see mid-game improvement from these players before I'm sold that this is going to be, like, a top 4 team.
I like that they rebuilt around Jackies. I think Closer... I think this lineup needed a stable player, and I think Closer is that stable player, and I think that Lot will have to see, but I feel like the Antonio kind of, like, capped out what we were going to see from him, at least in the context of LEC. And so I do feel like this roster has a lot of firepower in the early game, as you highlighted, and room for growth, which when we talk about coming into winter at the very least, like long term, I'm not a lot depends on how they manage conflict, how they handle performance issues, because you highlighted it, right? Like, bot lane, great, incredibly high highs, incredibly low lows.
Yeah.
But I'm optimistic about that. But even if you're not optimistic, I think at the very least it's pretty easy to expect that winter, when teams are still finding their footing, this team is going to be a threat.
What I will say though is, like, in the context of the question of who won the offseason, Fnatic literally got upset on Mickey, which I think is just, I know like in terms of difference, I think GIANTX obviously got a big win, but grabbing upset and Mickey, like I understand where the criticism comes from. I understand why G2 made the changes that they did. And I also understand why KC wanted to bring in Kalist, a player I'm very excited to see. This KC roster, I think on paper looks really good and I'm excited. But upset and Mickey, I think that this is going to make Fnatic like they were already a top team in the LEC. The big question is, can they now close out games consistently when the pressure is on? But this bot lane, I think it's a bot lane we've never seen before. Juicy. Upset and Mickey is a partnership we've like, I don't know why I thought I'd seen it before, but we haven't.
It just makes sense.
Yeah. But I think that the surprise is that Upset actually went back to Fnatic because based on their last experience working together, it didn't seem like that they were on good terms, but they've been able to resolve it. Upset's back on Fnatic and they've got a very strong bot lane. And now it's just a question of if Humanoid, he had a bad year, if he can get his, quite frankly, shit together and lock in for 2025. My only point of criticism would be Oscar is like not the scariest top laner in the league. Well, but I don't think the top lane pool is a big, very deep one right now in Europe. So
I'm surprised that when Fnatic looked to make changes that they cut the entire bot lane. Now, by the end of the offseason, I know they also changed coaching staff. I know Grabs is coming in. So I'm not sure what the entire context of the offseason was for Fnatic, but I was surprised that neither solo laner ended up getting changed. Humanoid, not because I don't believe that he has a ceiling, just because it's inconsistent, as we've kind of noted for years now. And Oscar, because he didn't show it. Not that he doesn't have more room to grow, but he had a lot of time on this roster, and he was never consistently a top laner in our league, right? Even if he did. He had some good moments.
He's definitely been a top laner in our league.
I think he's had like a split where he's been good, but he spent more time not being, I would say, top 3 than he has spent being top 3.
I don't have the memory I just
That's
don't
fine.
trust
That's
that.
fine. I was surprised at the bot lane. Like, if you talk about the end of the year consistency, I was surprised that no one jumped on the chopping block. I do think that Mickey, the thing with Mickey and Upset is, Upset had mostly a terrible year on KC.
I don't know if...
No, he mostly... KC...
G2.
Upset.
Oh, Upset.
I think he looked decent.
He looked,
as KC started to figure out how they wanted to play. I think Upset
towards the end of the year, KC had a redemption arc. Yeah. I agree.
His best.
But Upset has spent a lot of the last X years. I am all aboard, ready, open arms when Upset is, cracked again, to welcome him back into the fold and be like, we knew it. We knew it was going to happen. But I don't want to sign that check too soon. And the same is true of Mickey. While I do think that he got more criticism and more blame probably for G2's failing than he deserved in some contexts. And obviously I know Mickey very well personally. It's like, I'm not just going to bet that everything's just going to vibe and they're going to come out of the gate swinging. So I think that long-term, this is an upgrade, but I will not be surprised if we come back at the end of winter and go, well, didn't click the way it was supposed to.
I mean, that's fair.
The ceiling, incredibly high. Don't get me wrong. But
honestly, my perspective, and this is me projecting, okay? But I feel like Upset and Mickey have a chip on their shoulder. That is, and I
for
feel
sure they do.
The way that you get motivated is to have that. And Upset, to be fair, he probably went into the KC contract knowing exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
It was a 1-year contract. He knew he was going to be replaced by Kalist, They got 4th place in the playoffs and they lost to G2, which must have been so frustrating for them because if G2 had just beaten Mad, KC would have been like, we could have beaten Mad. It has to be a perspective that they have, right? And I can't help but feel like this bot lane is really motivated to prove people wrong. And we spoke to Razork extensively last year and he talked about how sometimes they just int, right? Now, is this the bot lane that suddenly solves that? I can't answer that question. The truth, my instincts say no, but I can't help but feel excited because I feel like the communication should just naturally be better because you've now got an English-speaking bot lane, I would say.
Sure.
And I just feel like Upset and Mickey is super motivated. And also, bringing in Grabs, he's been out of the scene for a while, at least in terms of the LEC level. He's probably also super motivated to prove himself. This just feels like a roster that's we want to prove ourselves. And quite frankly, I feel like G2 in winter will objectively be weaker. Yeah. I think, I know that the Red Bull show was not the pinnacle of anything, but low-key, I was really happy for Yike. But it was a league
of its own.
When Yike won in that show match against G2, and again, I know there's a bunch of caveats, but I was really happy for Yike. I like the fact that he was kicked, I think that he was a project that, they invested in, they gave him 2 years of opportunity, and sure, they needed to make a change. But as a player, whenever you leave G2, the automatic instinct is you're going to fail now, right? Yeah. You've had your time. You got to play with Caps. Congratulations. But now, you're on your own. Good luck. Now you're only going to... It'll be a fond memory for you.
Yeah.
And so to see him... I want to see him succeed without Caps, because I think that as a player, he deserves that opportunity. And so I'm excited for him.
100% agree. Here are the questions for me. Upset Mickey, do they click with the rest of the team? Are they able to show consistently solid performances? Right? To me, that's an easy, a pretty solid yes, but I want to see it. And the other question is, Fnatic mental boom happened 3 times last year.
Man.
3 times last year. Now, I think it will be easier to resolve without a language barrier, just because obviously the nuance of any emotional conversation is tough to translate.
This is a veteran roster at this point. No rookies here anymore.
Sure. Humanoid's a veteran, and we have seen
I know.
him randomly lock in whatever the hell.
Every iteration of Fnatic. Last year may have been the worst in its history. The whole G2 Fnatic final was...
Yeah.
Ooh.
But so I want to see if Grabs being there and the changes in the support staff result in that issue, because that's the issue that I not that he's not going to do a million other things, but that's the thing that I think, if you're looking from the perspective of a Fnatic fan, was the most frustrating, was you should have won that stupid final against G2.
You should have.
You shouldn't have lost to Team Liquid nearly as much as you did. There's so many things you should have done with the players that you had, and whether or not they actually do those things, I hope they actually perform.
It was mad that it was eliminated by GAM, wasn't it? And then Fnatic was WE at Worlds?
I don't know.
Weibo. Yeah. That's why.
The only question I have for this is, I guarantee every one of these players can play a team fight. They can play exceptionally well. They're all phenomenal players. Does it solve the shot calling issue? And I don't think Mickey is a player that's going to be vocal enough to solve the shot calling issues in the mid game. And I don't know if Upset is going to be that person either. Maybe he is, because I know he can be quite vocal behind the scenes. But until that issue gets solved, I think Fnatic is probably the team that we're going to see perform the best in Winter. But as it starts to go on throughout the year, and if you start looking at internationals, I need to see that solved before I fully believe in them. But this is probably the most excited I've been in Fnatic in a while.
Yep.
It's just, that's the only question I have is, what is mid-game shot calling, and can you fix that? Because if you do, you're the best team in the league.
It's weird to me that I'm just blindly optimistic about Fnatic.
This is so bizarre to me.
I'm genuinely
I was actually so excited when you said that, because I was I completely disagree. I think that you could argue this is a good off season, but I don't have nearly the same amount of faith.
I just really believe in this bot lane for some reason. Yeah. I feel like that Mickey, he's been kicked from G2 again, right? And then Upset was basically homeless because he didn't have a spot after KC. Yeah. And I don't know, I really believe in this bot lane.
Yeah.
And I have faith in Razork. I think he was the most consistent jungler throughout the entire year. And I just think that the veterancy of Mickey and Upset, I think that they can bring, I believe in their stability. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Those are the rosters we're most excited for. Obviously, there's 10 teams to talk about. We don't have quite enough time to cover everyone, but over the next few weeks, we'll be able to cover more. And of course, you can check out on live this weekend when we cover LEC. But before we go, I want to make sure we have a chance to check in with our lovely community, Twitter and YouTube. We went to get some questions. And I think Odardo, asking the question on many people's minds, is Kalist going to keep up to the hype? Now, I think the KC fans already know the answer or believe that they know the answer, but that might just be blind faith. Is he going to keep it hype, or are we going to have a Bo type situation again?
I believe in him. I am a believer in Kalist. It might be because I met him and he's just a really sweet guy.
And it's really hard to badge in real life.
Betty just really likes bot lanes this year.
I'm genuinely really excited for AD carries this year, for sure. But I think that he does give me reckless vibes, from when he was young. Just very humble, very down to earth, very grounded. One of the things that did surprise me was that he's nervous, but when I talked to him about expectations, he was like, honestly, no, he's not really thinking about that. He's literally just thinking about it one game at a time. He's really just trying to focus on, I want to perform well in this game. I want to perform well in my first game on the LEC. But the beauty of KC is they've had the luxury of playing in arenas multiple times. Yeah. And so the LEC studio to him is very much just like another day at the office.
Mario Party on the couch with a few minutes.
And you've got to remember that the KC fans, the French crowd, is really insane. We've all experienced it before, and so he's got overwhelming support. I just think that he is set up for success, and I think for Winter, the pressure shouldn't be that high. It's a scary split for sure, but Winter, I think for a lot of teams around the world, is just that high pressure, short burst, which then leads into a potential international event. But and the addition of Yike alongside him, I think he's set up for success. I'm excited.
I agree. I don't think he's going to make the splash immediately, which is the only caveat I say. And I think it's unfair to expect that because shifting between EMEA Masters level and into LEC are two very different beasts. And even the coordination where you can step on the map, like, oh, can I push up to it, get this wave? No, at LEC level you can't, and EMEA Masters you can. And suddenly you're down like, 200, 300 more gold than you're really expecting. So I think there are going to be some learning curves, but I have no doubt that this guy is going to be one of the next best AD carries that is going to be on the lips of everyone for years to come. I think it's just give him the transition period, wait for that to really come into full effect. But yeah, I'm very, very excited to have Kalista join the league.
Me too.
His first match is against Hans, by the way.
Oh, that's such a banger. I'm inclined to believe the hype just because I've seen so many moments and it's so universally recognized, like how good this player is. But I think to your point, Rob, like sometimes it takes a while. Yeah. While I do think he'll transition better than like the challenger players of old. And I think it's just a trend in general for players coming to LEC, right? I think it's less of a gap than it used to be in terms of like environment, everything. Yeah. I still want to give him time because I think there's so much of the world that, similar to the Bo situation, is like, we are going to worship him or despise him, and there will be no middle ground. And I think that is like, that's too much pressure to put on a single player.
Like, his play style is so knife's edge. Like, he wants to play right up in your face and dodge like 3 skill shots, trust himself to do that, and then be able to carry the fight from that. If the other team is just better at hitting their buttons, you're going to mess up once or twice, right? Yeah. So I think it is also going to be a learning case of, hey, this is what I can do in this moment. And then once he has that adjustment, I think he's going to be just as insane as he was. Yeah, like K-Corp the whole time.
Genuinely, Fnatic, G2, KC, I think those are the 3 fighting for the top spots right now. So I'm genuinely really excited.
Okay, I didn't get to talk about this, but don't sleep on Rogue for Winter. Just for Winter, long-term, no fade. Because Malrang's back. Jonghoon.
So
Patrick and Larson have spent their careers putting themselves on a leash, holding back, playing reserve. These two players can never be leashed. Never be leashed.
I literally wrote down the revolving door of what Rogue has been in my notes. Because you look at like the last 2 years, the top lane was Shigenda, Finn, Adam, Jungle, Malrang, Markoon, Malrang. Then it's just Larson. Larson. To Patrick. Trimbizo, at least to execute. I'm like, once they eventually figure out what it is, I'm like,
calling him
I'm like, look, none of these iterations have worked. I have no faith that this iteration will work, to be perfectly honest. And I'm happy to be
I was planning on not talking about Rogue.
Yeah. And I'm going to stick to that. I just want to say that. I just want to say
that. They disappointed a lot of people last year.
But you don't
They've
understand.
got a lot of rebuilding to do.
The biggest off-season winners for Rogue is us. Because that team won't be slow. That team's gonna fight.
Will not be slow. That's true.
Malrang, I think, was the best jungler to pair with Larson.
I welcome the return.
I welcome the return of Malrang. Is it gonna blow up? I don't know, but I want to watch. 100%. That's one thing I'm for sure about.
Next question.
Mark Hoster the Great on YouTube says, I'm just hoping now that there are more teams that seem good. There's more competition. The competition will hopefully elevate the region to be better. I'm going to turn this into a bit more structured question, which is, do we think the region is going to be better this year?
Ooh, no.
I agree.
But I think everyone's going to suck.
I agree.
Well, no, but that's very
so
common,
many
right?
changes.
Winter is very common. But like, when I think about like the year, I feel like a question like that is like, he wants to know international, right?
Yeah,
like when we look at these rosters, do we think internationally we're going to have a better opportunity? And quite frankly, right now, my any tournament expectations, G2, Fnatic, KC, I genuinely believe can be good, can be very, very good. Will they live up to that hype? I'm not going to promise anything because I thought last year they could be really good too. And we didn't make it out of groups again, which is just another failure from my perspective. And so changes need to happen. We've seen changes. I like the potential of Fnatic, G2, and Carmine right now. And so I'm going to believe in these 3 teams to be the top end of our league.
And I will say there's 2 perspectives I have on this. One, as you highlighted, everyone's going to be worse because there are so many changes happening around the globe between Fearless, New Rift, all these changes there. Like, teams are going to take more time to adapt to that. So even if the games look close at a high level, it just won't be as polished because there's just new variables that people won't have had the time to figure out. That said, that's usually the best chance for the West versus LPL or LCK. So us and the new league that I've already forgot the name of, LTA, thank you, to get games or to win series off LPL and LCK teams.
Innovation, baby.
It's usually innovation. And that's what 2019 was. It was all the crazy flex picks. It was high individual level. And it was a unique understanding of macro at MSI, right? And it's like, if we come in and we're cooking and we have something special, that's the best chance I think the LEC is going to have.
I think that we have 3 international tournaments does make a difference. Because you get like a third of the way through the year for best team to go and say, okay, what are LPL teams doing that we're not doing? They take that learning, they come back to the LEC and they go, cool, this is how we're fixing our stuff. And we get to do it before an MSI. Then we get the entire league get to go, hey, G2, Fnatic, KC, whoever it might be, are now doing this better. We need to level up on this little bit because they're now doing this different. And then we get to MSI, we get another touch point, and you basically just get to keep doing it. So I think the fact that there are more international tournaments is just going to help out on elevating us as we, over time, start to improve off of stuff.
The thing that I'm going to laugh at is the discussion around formats, because now everyone's format is completely different to one another. And so it's just going to be this, like, it's going to be a mess.
There you go. Took a second to rein back the various curse words.
It's going to be a mess of fans arguing, well, this format is the best. No. Like, that format's denying these things.
But if you take line 2 and 3 from here and add it to 5, 6 from here, and then you just add this little smidgen from NFL. Then you're
because the LEC has 3 different formats. I think the LCK also has 3 different formats throughout the year. The LTA, I think, is a little more consistent, but I think they also... LPL also has some sort of crazy stuff going on. They have some stuff that they've taken from last year with some new stuff as well.
Splits within the split.
So basically what we have the opportunity to all learn from each other. It's a new opportunity for a bunch of people. LEC was obviously the testing grounds as we tried some formats that people saw pros and cons in. But yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a very exciting competitive year. My instinct is LPL is going to be the best, only because they're great at playing around objectives. I think of the most successful LPL teams in history, and it's just been their ability to play through objectives. And I think that your ability to set up for objectives is going to be super important in a meta where it's just objective after objective after objective.
And also they have the Shine rookie, so
they are also back, but we know the coin flip that is.
No.
Okay. As much as I appreciate us diving into,
but the point is, it's going to be crazy, I think, and I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm looking forward. I'm genuinely really, really excited for this year. It's going to be a crazy packed year.
It is.
Make sure everyone rests where they can, because it's going to be action-packed, non-stop league.
It certainly is. Shout out to Mark Hostra. Shout out to the person whose name I accidentally pushed back on for the first Twitter question. And the last, it's just, there's not really anything we can do with this. I'm just going to read it. And on that note, we'll end the episode. Don't forget that LEC is coming back Saturday, Sunday, Monday, starting at 6. 5:30 for the pre-show.
First match is...
It's going to be a banger.
Rogue versus Heretics, 6 p.m.
Which is
on
gonna
Saturday.
slap. Execute, aka Jonghoon and Malrang back in the lead. 3 rookies, the most French team in the league. Team Heretics playing against them on a Spanish org. It's gonna be great. And then the words of Acidic Jazz 1999 as we close out here. I want the LEC back so I can spam in the chat. I want the LEC back in my life. And on that incredibly cringy note, this has been EUphoria. Thank you both for joining, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.